Before anyone becomes skilled, there's a moment where they feel lost, unfocused, inconsistent, unsure where to even begin. Maybe you felt that too. Wanting to improve but slipping back into old habits. Wanting discipline but feeling overwhelmed by the long path ahead. Centuries ago, a boy felt the exact same way. That boy was Miyamoto Musashi, the man who would become one of the greatest samurai in history. Restless, frustrated, failing, often unsure why progress felt so slow. His father taught him a lesson he wouldn't understand until years later. Before you try to win, learn how to see. And that was the beginning of a path to mastery the world would later call Shuhari, a path you can follow today. Chapter 1. Shu, the quiet beginning. Before Musashi became a name whispered across Japan, he was just a boy trying to find control over a body that felt too wild for the world around him. The old records say he was rough, quick-tempered, impossible to keep still. When other children practiced their lessons, Musashi paced the dirt roads with a wooden sword dragging against the ground, looking for anyone willing to test him. He wasn't disciplined, he wasn't refined, and he certainly wasn't skilled. What he had was something simpler, a desire to become someone he wasn't yet. One morning after losing a sparring match against an older student, Musashi returned home furious, his pride bruised deeper than his body. His father, Musashi, watched him from the doorway. He noticed the trembling hands, the uneven breath, the stubborn refusal to accept weakness. Musashi was a strict man, but not unkind. He knew what it meant for a young warrior to burn hotter than he could control. "Musashi," he said, "you're trying to fight with a fire that isn't shaped yet." He led his son to the yard where an old tree stump stood buried in the earth. "Strike this," he said, "every day until you learn what strength really is." Musashi looked confused. He expected a lesson in footwork, a new technique, something exciting. Instead, a stump, a dead, unmoving block of wood. "Why this?" he demanded. His father didn't raise his voice. "Because the stump won't move for you. It won't fear you. You'll learn more from that than from any opponent." So, Musashi began day after day, swing after swing. At first, he attacked the stump the way he attacked everything. Too fast, too hard, without breath or rhythm. The wooden sword ricocheted, numbing his arms. Splinters bit into his palms, his shoulders burned. Some mornings he wanted to throw the sword into the river and disappear into the hills. But he came back every single day, and slowly the stump started teaching him. He noticed how tightening his grip too early slowed the strike, how shifting his weight changed the sound of the impact, how breathing before the swing steadied the blade, how the stump didn't yield to force, only to precision. Frustration gave way to attention, attention gave way to understanding, understanding gave way to calm. Shu is this stage, though Musashi didn't know the word. The stage where you follow, where repetition becomes awareness and awareness becomes instinct. One morning, weeks into training, Musashi looked at his hands. The blisters had hardened into calluses. The tremble in his grip was gone. His stance felt rooted. His swing felt connected, not frantic, but clear. His father watched him from the doorway and nodded. Now he said, "You're beginning to see. Not beginning to win, not beginning to fight, beginning to see." Musashi didn't become exceptional through talent. He became exceptional by repeating the unglamorous work everyone else avoided. The early mornings, the quiet practice, the foundation nobody applauds. Years later, when he fought his first real duel at 13, the world saw a boy capable of defeating a grown samurai. But Musashi knew better. That victory wasn't made in the heat of the moment. It was built one swing at a time in the stillness of his yard against a stump that refused to move. And that is the truth of the beginning. Mastery doesn't introduce itself with fireworks. It whispers in the hours where nothing seems to happen. Shu is not about brilliance. It's about consistency, about humility, about learning how to stand before you learn how to strike. Musashi's journey didn't start with greatness. It started with calloused hands, an immovable stump, and a boy finally learning how to breathe. Chapter 2. Breaking the pattern. By the time Musashi entered his late teens, he had outgrown the stump in his father's yard. The basics were no longer enough. His stance was rooted, his strike was clean, his breath followed the rhythm of his movements. But something inside him felt restless again. The same fire that pushed him into trouble as a boy, now evolving into a deeper hunger. He wanted to understand the sword, not just swing it. He wanted to understand opponents, not just defeat them. He wanted to understand himself. So he left home. No ceremony, no farewell feast. Just a young man with a wooden sword tucked into his belt and a determination bigger than his village. That departure marked the beginning of Musashi's wandering years. The years when he shifted from learning the form to questioning it. The fights he encountered on the road were nothing like the drills he practiced. Some opponents were reckless, some were patient, some used weapons he had never seen, others fought with fear, desperation, revenge, intentions that had nothing to do with honor. Musashi realized quickly, real combat doesn't care about rules. It doesn't wait for the perfect stance. It doesn't pause for ritual. It doesn't reward tradition. That realization cracked something open inside him. One evening he arrived at a village ruled by the Yoshio clan, a samurai school known for overwhelming newcomers. Students followed rigid katana, perfect lines, perfect synchronization, perfect memorized movements. And yet something bothered him. The forms were beautiful but fragile, predictable, locked, untouched by real pressure. Musashi asked a student why they trained with such strictness. "This is the correct way," the student said proudly. "Innovation is dangerous." Musashi smiled. "Only if you stop paying attention." When he challenged the school's teacher, the village expected Musashi to lose instantly, but when the duel began, Musashi didn't mirror their stance. He didn't follow their choreography. He stepped off the line. A tiny movement, but unexpected enough to break rhythm. The teacher hesitated for a fraction of a second. Musashi entered that space and ended the duel far faster than anyone expected. The village murmured, some impressed, some furious. Musashi wasn't trained that way. He didn't follow their path. He broke the pattern. The duel wasn't about winning. It was about understanding something deeper. If you only do what you're taught, you'll only ever beat people who were taught the same things. Musashi began seeking unfamiliar opponents. Spearmen, archers, chain and sickle masters, fighters in armor, fighters half drunk, fighters with nothing to lose. Every battle taught him something new. Timing, distance, psychology, exhaustion, fear, deception. He wrote later that you must study the ways of many arts. And during these wandering years, he lived that truth. He learned from carpenters how to judge weight and balance. He learned from monks how to steady his breath in chaos. He observed animals and how instinct overrides hesitation. The breaking stage wasn't rebellion, it was evolution. There's a story of Musashi watching tides crash against a cliffside. A fisherman asked him why. Musashi said, "To understand strength, I study what doesn't try to be strong." He began breaking not just technique, but his own assumptions. He stopped relying on forms and started relying on perception. He stopped acting from memory and started acting from awareness. He stopped fighting opponents and started fighting patterns. One of the most famous examples came in his duel with Shishito Bacon, master of the chain and sickle. Most swordsmen froze when the weighted chain began to spin. It was hypnotic, unpredictable, deadly. Tradition said, "Keep distance." Tradition said, "Wait for an opening." Musashi ignored tradition. As soon as the chain spun, he stepped inward, shocking everyone. Bacon expected fear. Instead, he received pressure. The duel ended in moments. Breaking patterns doesn't mean disrespecting what you learned, it means outgrowing it. In modern life, this is the stage where people plateau. You learn the basics, then repeat them forever. Progress slows, creativity dies, confidence shrinks. Ha is the moment you take responsibility for your own growth. It's the moment you stop obeying out of fear. Stop hiding behind routines that once helped you. Stop pretending repetition is progress. It's the moment you say there has to be another way, and then prove it. Musashi didn't become legendary because he mastered one style. He became legendary because he refused to stay inside one. He didn't abandon the basics, he expanded them. He didn't reject his teachers, he surpassed them. He didn't break patterns for rebellion, he broke patterns for clarity. Ha is messy, ha is uncomfortable, ha is growth. And Musashi walked through the stage with the same stubborn courage he had as a boy. Only now his fire was shaped, not wild. He was no longer learning to strike, he was learning to understand. Chapter 3. Becoming your own path. By the time Musashi entered his 30s, he had already defeated some of the most respected warriors in Japan. He had fought in forests, on riverbanks, in narrow alleys, on open fields, and even against entire clans. He had slept in temples, barns, roadside inns, and sometimes under the open sky. His life had become a long trail of duels, failures, breakthroughs, observations, and small revelations gathered across years of wandering. And then something unexpected happened. He stopped seeking opponents, not because he feared losing. He knew victory and defeat mattered less than clarity. He stopped because he realized he had reached a stage no opponent could push him through anymore. Technique had evolved into understanding. Understanding had evolved into insight. Insight had begun turning into something deeper, expression. This was the beginning of REI, the stage where form and formlessness meet. There's a quiet story from this period. Musashi was invited to observe a calligraphy master in Kyoto. The master wrote with such effortless simplicity that each stroke looked alive. Musashi watched silently, expecting some revelation about wrist angle or brush technique. Instead, the master set down the brush and said, "You fight with the body. I write with the body, but expression comes from somewhere else." Musashi didn't answer, but something inside him shifted. He wasn't watching technique. He was watching a person who was their craft, someone beyond rules, beyond imitation, beyond effort. The brush moved because the man moved, and the man moved because the moment moved. This was Rai. Musashi began exploring this stage in ways no one expected from a swordsman. He painted landscapes and birds. He carved wooden statues. He wrote poems. He sketched animals from memory. These weren't hobbies. They were extensions of the same internal process that shaped his swordsmanship. By mastering many arts, he stopped seeing boundaries between them. To Musashi, the sword, the brush, and the chisel were all the same path. In duels, this transcendence became even more visible. He no longer relied on practiced footwork or memorized counters. His movements were simple, almost plain. He wasn't faster or stronger, he was present, fully attuned to rhythm, timing, intention, and the shifts in the air around him. When he faced Sasaki Kojiro on Ganu Island, people remember the wooden sword carved from an oar, or the late arrival, or the single decisive strike. But the real victory wasn't in the tactic, it was in the mindset. Musashi stepped onto that beach with nothing to defend and nothing to prove. He fought with the same clarity he painted with. His presence itself was a weapon. That is the essence of Rei. You no longer use technique, you are technique. After Kojiro's defeat, Musashi felt no triumph. Witnesses said he walked away in silence, unsatisfied, almost distant. not because the duel was unworthy, but because he realized the path of the sword had given him everything it could. To grow further, he had to transcend even that. So he withdrew from the world. He entered Gondo, a quiet cave overlooking the valley, and lived alone with nothing but a few tools, blank scrolls, and the thoughts he carried from decades of wandering. There, in silence, he wrote the Book of 5 Rings, not as a trophy, not as a manual, but as his final attempt to translate a lifetime of motion into a language others could understand. The words he wrote weren't about swordsmanship. They were about perception, timing, rhythm, awareness, state of mind. They were the distilled essence of the understanding that the ultimate technique is clarity and the ultimate path is the one you build yourself. In modern life, appears when you stop copying and start becoming, when discipline turns into identity, when the habits you forced yourself through as a beginner become the foundation of who you naturally are. When you can express yourself through your craft without hesitation or comparison. Is the stage where external validation loses power, where creativity returns, where mastery becomes freedom. Musashi didn't reach this stage by chasing greatness. He reached it by surrendering to the path long enough for the path to shape him in return. He followed, he broke, he transcended. And you can do it too.